What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kai. Welcome to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Today's episode is all about changing the game in affordable school supplies and elevating communities. Today's guest, I've got Clare Richards, the passionate CEO and co-founder of Impacks, reshaping education in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and beyond. With a decade in marketing and advertising, Clare's heart pulled her towards education reform. In 2020, Impacts emerged from the basement, offering tailored school supply kits and affordable solutions to the back-to-school chaos that comes with the back-to-school time of year. It's a lot of nonsense and craziness that go on. I don't know how parents do it. I have two cats, so that's all I have to deal with. They're not in school. Clare is a ukulele enthusiast and an advocate for accessible education. And Clare's on a mission to empower students and teachers. And I'm excited. So let's unravel Clare's inspiring journey, discover how Impacts is transforming the back-to-school experience for families nationwide. Hi, Clare. Welcome. It's nice to see you.
Hello. My
I'm
goodness,
so happy you're
you
here.
pretty much covered it all in that
I know.
bio. That was great.
I know that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll talk to you next
Perfect.
time.
All right. See you next time.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited we're here. And one of the things that I wanted to start off by talking about is how we met, which is a really cool thing. So Clare and I were two of 10 people that were chosen as the 10 outstanding young Americans. Like there was 10 of us that were chosen this year, and both of us were selected. I keep the award right here actually on my desk. It's very heavy.
It is very heavy.
It is very heavy.
Heavy.
I know.
You could definitely kill an intruder with that thing.
No, like legit. Wait, so what's funny? So you live in Minnesota, so you didn't have to fly in, right? You drove there, I'm assuming?
I did. I was only an hour away.
Right.
But when I found out that next year's is being held in Hawaii, I was like, how do we feel about postponing? What? I know. But it was very convenient. I'll say that.
That's fair. Well, I had to fly in, right? And so I didn't realize how big this was going to be. I had no room in my suitcase. So they gave us like a nice box where everything's like cushioned in. And like I couldn't fit it in anything that I had. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to like finagle this thing. So I put it in my suitcase, not boxed. I wrap it up with like my clothes.
My gosh.
I know. And so it's in my suitcase, barely fitting in. So I put it, I'm at the security checkpoint. I put it through. And the security guy is like see his face looking at the screen. What? And so he pulls the bag and he's like, can you open your bag, please? I'm like, I know what this is about. So I open it up and he pulls this out. He's like, what is this?
Okay, for those who can't see it,
yes.
It is one of the most unique looking trophies, awards, whatever you want to call it, I've ever encountered. Yes. It's two hands. One is reaching up and one is reaching down, and the fingers are touching. It's really actually stunning.
It's really cool, but out of context.
But it's weird. It's really weird. It's not like your run-of-the-mill glass award. It's really interesting. And that poor security guard.
Yes. So I had to
had to have expected that, right?
I a little bit. Well, I didn't expect it until I got there, right? And what's funny is that like I have to explain to him what it was. And like I'm like, sir, okay, just so you know, I'm not bragging and I'm not trying to be like braggadocious here, but I was selected as one of the 10 outstanding young Americans. And this is the word that he gave. He's like, okay.
You really should have started with like, do you even know who I am?
Do you know who I am? I was standing next to Clare Richards.
Award-winning American. God, that's funny.
God. Yes.
Yeah, what a fantastic event and program. Talk about imposter syndrome, which usually I don't struggle with. There have been moments, of course, over the course of my career, especially in the startup, But man, being on the stage with all of
Oh my
those
gosh.
incredible people, I was like,
Yes.
what am I doing here?
No, I thought the same thing. And I was telling my friends when I got back, I'm like, you have one person that's like in the military and saving lives. You have another person that's like bringing books to school children. And I'm like, I make silly videos on Instagram.
It's, it's all worthwhile though, when you take a step
Yes.
back and you
Yes.
understand there are a million different ways to touch
Mhm.
people and impact lives. And
Yes.
so that is one thing I really appreciate about that award is it spans all of that and it really highlights things that are being done that are really
Mhm.
interesting and unique. And yeah, I
Mhm.
just think that's really special.
Yeah, and with that said, I want to highlight what you got recognized for, which is so cool. Impacts, like holy cow. Like the more like I knew during the ceremony like what it was that you did, right? But like I didn't really know in like a full detail because like the whole weekend just flew by. And so like when I was prepping for this and reading up about you and the organization, I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my God. So if you don't mind, can you just take a couple seconds and just explain what Impacts is and how it helps people with school?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband and I own this business, Impacts. We launched it in 2020.
Mhm.
In retrospect, probably not the most ideal year to
Oh, did
launch a
something
pure
happen? So,
school-based
did
business.
something happen in 2020? I
Yeah, they
don't
were just
know.
like a little preoccupied
Just a
that
little
year.
bit.
But in essence, Impacts is a tech-powered company that simplifies the ways that parents and educators access school supplies. And so we do that in a couple different ways. What we're best known for is our customized school supply kits. And
Mhm.
so we'll partner with the school. We'll build these kits that are tailored to each grade within that school. Parents can hop online, order their kid's kit in about 30 seconds. It could not be easier. And then in the checkout process, parents have the opportunity to donate. And if they do, we match a portion. So I'm hoping we'll have plenty of time here to talk about
Yeah,
social impact because
absolutely.
we are rooted in a social impact methodology, which
Mhm.
just means we're a for-profit company that seeks to do good in the world.
Mhm.
But before we dive into that, I'll just share a little bit about some of the other things we do as a company. We work with schools often to give them access to bulk pricing. So if they need to buy a ton of supplies for all of the students, we can help them get great prices because we work directly with manufacturers like Elmer's or
Yeah.
Ticonderoga,
Yeah.
um, which is just a fun word to say. It's a
It is.
Ticonderoga is a type of
I'm
pencil.
gonna work that into my day tomorrow, just randomly. I'm gonna
Yeah,
work it
like
in. I'll let you know how it goes.
my favorite pencil, a Ticonderoga. Um, And in addition to that, we also work directly with businesses,
Mhm.
nonprofits to facilitate what I like to call the new back to school drive. So
Mm.
it's a slightly different take on the back to school drives we've become familiar with.
Right, right.
So what do you want to know? What should I elaborate
I
on?
I wanna start from the beginning, right? So you like how do you go from marketing, digital advertising, all of that to starting this in your basement, right? How did that transition happen? What sparked this entire idea?
Gosh, it's a good question because I really have no business starting a K-12 school supply company. I wasn't a teacher. I'm not a parent. I mean, I was homeschooled for God's sake.
Right.
But I think that every entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial spirit is really driven from a simple place, and that is to solve real human challenges.
Mhm.
And so impacts came to be after my husband and I were doing these back to school drives. We had started a young leader service organization called Rotaract, which is a
Mhm.
part of the Rotary family for those
Mhm.
familiar with Rotary. It's an international service organization. So we had started the St. Cloud chapter of this club back in 2015.
Mhm.
And so through Rotaract, we were doing these back to school drives every year, and we were partnering with the local school district and the United Way or the Catholic Charities or the
Right.
Lutheran Social Services, you name it. And excuse me, what happened was we just became very exposed to this great need, this gap in the school system when it came to supplying critical supplies to students. And you
Right.
had all these nonprofits working on it, but the gap was never truly met.
Right.
And so this got us thinking, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. So that was what sparked this desire for social impact.
Yeah.
But if we go even further back, both Brandon and I worked at Office Max in college. So
Got it.
we saw the other side of this, the parent
Yeah.
side. I mean, I have never seen parents who are so willing to swear in front of their children as I have watching parents back to school shop.
So you're saying that Office Max is where all the action takes place, is what you're saying?
Oh man, I mean, people shop in all sorts of places, right?
Yeah.
Walmart,
Yeah.
Target,
Yeah.
people shop on Amazon, right? But my memories of Office Max were just like really pissed off parents. They would come in, they'd look at the little kiosk that had all of
Yeah.
the sheets of paper for local school districts.
Yeah.
They'd search for theirs. Sometimes that slot was empty, so then they'd be
Hmm.
even more pissed. But they would grab that sheet of paper, they'd walk up and down the aisles, they'd
Yeah.
find maybe a third, maybe a half of what they actually needed on that
Right.
list. And then they'd like check out in a huff and then go to the next store to buy the rest, right?
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's a two-sided issue, right? On
Yeah.
one hand, you've got students who are from underserved communities that lack
Hmm.
access to supplies.
Yeah.
And by the way, in those situations, teachers are often on the
Hmm.
hook to buy those
Hmm.
school supplies. On average, I believe the most recent stat I saw was from Adopt a Classroom, and they said teachers on average spend between $750 and
Oh my gosh.
$1,000
I-
out of pocket every year. We're talking about a population,
And
teachers that don't get paid very much.
that exactly. That's what I was gonna say. There, those of you that have been following me for a long time, y'all know that if there's three groups of people that I'm always giving shout outs to, are men and women of the military, or first responders, and teachers. And I'll never really understand why teachers don't get the respect that they deserve, because like I feel like a lot of times teachers are with the children more so than the parents are at some points. They're shaping our children's future, yet they don't get any respect, in my opinion. And my audience is mostly like, there's a lot of teachers that follow me, and I'm often hearing stories along the lines of what you're explaining now, where I mean, they're out of pocket, they're spending this money that honestly probably should be provided by the district, probably, right?
Oh,
So
it's insane. It's
like
insane.
that's incredible. So I guess my question to you, I'll start with, since we're talking about teachers, let's start with the teacher side of it. How often do you get to speak directly with teachers about the things that they struggle with? And that's number one. And number two, what has their response been to what you're doing with Impacts?
You know, especially when we were starting the company, we put forth a lot of effort to connect with every level of
Mm,
individual we would impact, from the administrators to the teachers to the parents, the
hmm.
PTAs, everyone in between. And we heard that from teachers all the time. They're spending enormous amounts out of pocket. They're generally speaking not very well paid to begin with,
Hmm.
but there is a teacher shortage crisis in
Mm,
America right now. It is a crisis. You talk to leadership within districts, you talk to other teachers, the attrition within school districts is intense. And so I know at the surface, when you see something like school supplies, I think people often jump to the conclusion of like, oh, that's the least of our worries.
Right, right.
And I won't deny that. Like, if you have kids that aren't eating at home, if you have kids that are not housed, if you have behavioral challenges in the classroom, if you're dealing with school safety,
Mm,
yes,
hmm.
school supplies is lower on that list. But what I will say is when it comes to attrition of teachers, it's not just one thing that contributes to that problem.
Right.
It's a barrage. And one of those pieces is what we're expecting of teachers. So if you're expecting your teacher to buy school supplies out of pocket,
Right.
that is a contributing factor to their dissatisfaction in their classroom and the lack of support. So,
Why is that? Like I'll never like, you probably have more insight on this than I do, but like why is it that it's at a point that we expect teachers to purchase their own material? Why is that not included in what is provided by a district?
well, I have lots of
That's the
feelings.
golden question. That's the golden
Yeah,
question, isn't it?
I have lots of feelings about this. And so
Yeah.
I'll try to separate feeling from fact if I can.
Mm,
And
sure.
I'll be truthful.
Yeah.
I don't know all the facts.
Hmm.
What I do know is that almost every district in America operates differently.
Yeah.
It's been truly a bizarre experience. So prior to 2020, like I said, was not a teacher, I'm not a parent, I was homeschooled.
Hmm.
I had very little exposure to the K-12 industry.
Hmm.
Now that I'm in this industry every single day, one, my appreciation for what administrators and teachers do every day has grown 1,000-fold.
Right.
And two, I've realized that there is really no consistency. I
Mm,
mean, you think about the public school system as being this entity that the country provides to its citizens,
hmm.
and you assume that there's going to be some consistency in that,
Right, right.
but there really isn't. Like, we will have two elementary schools that are a couple miles apart.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're in different districts, sometimes they're in the same district. One school will require their students to bring in 2 glue sticks per child.
Hmm.
The other will require 24 glue sticks per child, which is, by the way, ridiculous. What are they doing? Feeding the kids?
Right, right.
So
Like what are
there,
they?
I will say there are some lists that I get that I'm just like, whoa,
Right, right,
what's going on here? But it's always a good learning experience because
right,
there's always a good reason for it.
right.
I'm just realizing my laptop is running low on battery, so I'm gonna
Oh,
put
you're fine. No, you're all good. You're all good. I can use this time to thank our sponsor. The sponsor is the state of Minnesota, which hosted me and put me in a very creepy motel or hotel.
oh my goodness.
That hotel that we were in was I don't know if you got to explore it. I explored.
Oh, you're talking about for the award show?
Yes. Yes.
Wild. Wild.
Yes. It's the most weirdly shaped, weirdly. I think I learned that it used to be a hospital. Did you know that?
I think you might have told me that the night
Yeah.
of the award ceremony, and I'm looking
Yeah.
around like, how do they get
I
patients up
know.
these weird
I
stairs?
know. There was no like it was like so weird. I wish I should publish a blog just strictly about that building because it was very interesting. Um
Someone was really
yeah.
inspired.
Yeah, let's just say that. That's a good way to put it
Very
because
inspired. Let's just put it
somebody
that way.
somebody said, screw it, let's just give it a shot.
So
um
funny.
so one of the things that we were talking about before is in regards to the impact that this has on different uh, uh, neighborhoods and cultures in society, like so the societal impact of all of this. Obviously, not all, as you mentioned before, not all districts are the same, and there are tons of districts that do not get the same material, the same education as others. Um, what are you seeing from your end in regards to how different things are? Do you find that the struggle is a lot more real in certain areas than others?
Oh, for sure. For
Mm-hmm.
sure. I mean, generally speaking, we know that in impoverished communities,
Mm-hmm.
we see an immense lack of support.
Mm-hmm.
We see an immense lack of funding. We see a lack of community support as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, not just access to funds from a district level,
Right.
but less community support. So that's definitely a contributing factor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say, um, I do think a lot of this can come down to a lack of awareness.
Mm.
So I'll paint a picture for you.
Yeah, please. No, please. Mm-hmm.
School supplies, the back to school shopping experience has changed wildly since the
Right.
70s. Not in the process remains pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
You are given a list, you
Mm-hmm.
go to a store, you get what you need, you give it to your kid, they bring it on the first day of school. That part has remained unchanged.
Right.
But the actual expectation for what parents will pay for and what they will bring in on behalf of their children has increased dramatically. I
Mm.
believe I would have to pull up the exact number. I believe it has increased over 2000% in cost since the
Wow.
70s. You know,
Wow.
these lists can be crazy. Our our average kit is $50.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much an average kit costs. Our pricing, we can talk about affordability, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope we do,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
our kit is pretty comparable to, let's say, Walmart or Target.
Mm-hmm.
But you have some of these school supply lists that are over $100. Now,
Wow.
imagine you are a single mother of 4 kids, and each kid is
Mm.
expected to have over $100 in school supplies, and you have to drop that in the month of August.
Oh gosh.
That is an immense financial burden.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the National Retail Federation, the average spend per child on school supplies, and this is just supplies, this isn't tech, this isn't clothes or shoes, just the supplies alone is $140. That's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
so I do think sometimes the school and the teachers don't always know what they're actually asking for. So I'll give you an
Mm.
example. We worked with, it's called the Iron Range region of Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
one of the largest districts in Minnesota by geography, not by student count. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lower population, very widespread. There is a ton of poverty in this
Mm-hmm.
region. And so we were quoting out these lists, basically letting the school know, okay, if we stand up a portal page where your parents can go to buy these school supplies, here's how much they can expect to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And the kits were over $100 in some
Wow.
cases. And we're talking about an impoverished community.
Yeah.
And so immediately the school district was like, we're not working with you. You guys are way too expensive. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whether you choose to work with us, hold on for a second. This is the same as what they would spend if they're going to Target or Walmart. They'll spend
Yeah.
way more if they shop on Amazon. You are asking your parents to buy this. And it was a wake up call for them. So they, as a district, went back, reorganized, and
Wow.
put together new lists that were less than $35 per grade.
Wow. So like that actually leads into one of the questions that I had in regards to how like Impacts is addressing that affordability issue. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you're able to have these conversations sometimes with schools saying, "Hey, this is the situation." Just so you know, are th- like are they not are they that not aware of what it's like for parents?
I, you know, I would not put the blame on schools or teachers
Yeah.
or admin because one, their jobs are really hard. They're juggling a
Yeah.
lot of things. I think it's really easy for something to snowball year after year, and items just get added and added. And sometimes they're not always, teachers are not necessarily price checking on
Yeah.
Walmart or Amazon or anything as they're putting together these lists. I do think teachers are conscious of it. I don't think it's malicious in any way. I think, every year something gets added to the list and
Right.
nothing gets taken off. And all of a sudden you've got these really beefy lists.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of ways that we approach affordability. First and foremost, we are far more affordable than Amazon, for
Mm-hmm.
example. And so for the convenience shopper, we offer major convenience, 30 seconds. You know exactly what's going to come in your kit. It's exactly what the teacher asked for. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate convenience option. But it's also affordable. It's way more
Right.
affordable than
Right.
Amazon. In addition to that, when we look at the National Retail Federation, they are basically doing research every single year to assess
Mm-hmm.
how much your parents spend. So $140 is the average. Well, that's because when you go to Target, when you go to Walmart, you're not just buying exactly what the child needs. You're getting sucked into the end cap, sparkly,
Mm-hmm.
Superman, frozen notebooks, all of the specialty items that
Yeah.
cost 3, 4, 5 times what you could spend on the item that's actually being asked for. So there's that problem. And then there's also the problem of, like, let's say your teacher wants you to bring in one expo marker, but you're going up and down the aisles and all you can find is a 5-pack. So
Mm-hmm.
you're buying more than you need to because that's all you can find.
Right.
So there's, this thing that has happened, especially over the last decade, when we see schools' methodology to approaching bullying, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or the tensions between classmates. When teachers ask parents to bring in a yellow, blue, and red notebook and a green and purple folder, they're not just picking those colors randomly. They're usually paired with a specific curriculum need.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it because they want parents to bring in the same supplies so that you don't have some kids coming in with the frozen notebook and some kids coming in with the boring blue notebook.
Right.
Because when we think about bullying and how little kids learn about have and have not, this is just a low-hanging fruit way
Yes.
to equalize that classroom, right?
Right.
So there's lots of ways that impact can be made, not just affordability, but also how are we making these classrooms more equutable? And then, of
Absolutely.
course,
No.
you've got the fundraising.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to? You can talk about that if you want from the fundraising
Yeah.
side of it. Mm-hmm.
So, like I mentioned, we started out of a desire to have an impact on classrooms.
Right.
Actually, when we first started, we thought it was going to be a nonprofit.
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
the more I was digging in, the more I was like, okay, look at Tom's Shoes, or look at these examples of companies that are designed around social good.
Right.
They grow so much faster. They can have a national or international impact,
Mm-hmm.
unlike many nonprofits. Nonprofits tend to stay very small and very local.
Right.
And we're like, okay, if we're really going to put a dent in this thing, I think we need to come at it from a social impact model approach.
Right.
So we match a portion of each donation that's made by parents, but we also facilitate the new version of back to school drives, right? So
Mm-hmm.
since COVID, back to school drives are just not the same, right?
Yeah, it's way different now, I'm sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, way different. So
Yeah.
how do you facilitate those instead of workplace? You've got the big cardboard box where
Right. Right.
parents or community members just dump school supplies. And
Yeah.
honestly, like, if we're being honest, it was usually like whatever they could find in the discount aisle, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
top tier quality,
Sure. Yeah.
but that's what school supplies and the back to school supply experience was like.
Mm-hmm.
But since we haven't really returned to the office with the same level of
Mm-hmm.
intensity, we need to find ways to digitize that. And so that's what we help
Yes.
companies do.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Like, because I would have never thought that this would be something that a person could head up, and not only um in general, but just to dive in this deeply and to try to fully understand why this is happening and finding ways to not only help people in the short term, but also help in the long term, and hopefully, raise awareness for teachers and parents and districts and all of that. From a mental health side of things, like, I'm sure you get to speak with a lot of parents, right? My audience, there's tons and tons of parents that follow me, that talk about this type of issue. Like the stat that you threw out about, like if it's a single mom with 4 children, I didn't even think of something like that. You get to talk with a lot of these parents all the time. What have those conversations been like? How are parents doing right now when it comes to this?
It's a great question. Parents have so much on their plates,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going away. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
typically in an average household, both parents are working. There's
Mm-hmm.
a high level of stress. There's a lot of activity going on, right? The kids are really busy, you're really busy, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just trying to balance it. So I do think one of the most satisfying parts of my job is after we wrap the summer season, we will send out these surveys. And then we get to hear from parents, you
Mm-hmm.
know, what did we do well? Where do we need to improve? What's your feedback? And every year there are comments about how we make summer just a little bit easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of stress that gets wrapped into this to-do list, and you put it on the back burner. And then when you finally show up to the store in August, the shelves are totally empty. And then you have to
Right.
go order on Amazon, and you get a bunch of boxes and you way overspend. So I do think there's a level of just mental relief in having it
Mm-hmm.
taken care of.
Right.
But, I've also talked to a lot of adults that as children didn't have school supplies.
Mm.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier, how when you have big needs, sometimes the small needs slip through the cracks.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when you have a mental health crisis in our school systems, when you have school safety concerns,
Mm-hmm.
when you have students that don't have access to housing or food or a
Mm-hmm.
regular schedule at home, the last thing that we're thinking about is like, let's make sure they have pencils.
Right. Sure. Sure.
I totally get that. But then when you talk to these adults that as kids did not have school supplies,
Mm-hmm.
they don't necessarily remember the big things as much as they remember the small things,
Sure.
or they remember them in different ways. So
Right.
I spoke to somebody who's in their 30s now, who
Mm-hmm.
talked about when she was really young, never bringing in school supplies during elementary school, and how it was just this immense feeling of shame that just set the tone for
Yeah.
her whole experience. So I would never say that providing school supplies is more important than providing food, ever. Of course
Mm-hmm.
not. But I don't think we can diminish how important it is.
Mm-hmm. What, have you ever gotten any criticism for, or has there ever been anybody being like, this is a bad idea? Because like it seems like it goes without saying that like this is a good idea, and it helps a lot of people, from parents to teachers to the obviously the students themselves. But like, has anybody ever come up to you, or have you heard any sort of criticism like, no, this is not a good idea, I don't like it, I'm not going to support this? Have you ever gotten anything like that before?
Oh, well, we get a couple of things. Oftentimes, we'll try to work with schools individually or school
Mm-hmm.
districts, and they're just so overwhelmed by the big problems
Mm-hmm. Right.
that they're not open to any sort of conversation. They're kind of like, no, 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 like,
Yeah.
closing their ears. They don't want to talk to you. They think you're a solicitor. And that can be really frustrating because you're over here like banging your head against the wall, like, we're not selling you anything. It doesn't cost anything for the schools. Like we're trying to make this easier for parents, and we can raise money for your classrooms, but to acknowledge that these administrators, these principals are so underwater, and you have to be respectful of that. And you have to be careful not to add to that stress. So there's that. I would say sometimes people will make assumptions that like, oh, you're the most expensive option. Our parents can't afford a school supply kit. And I think it's misfounded. Okay, so if you are a dollar store shopper, you're probably not going to buy these kits, right?
Right.
Because these kits are, in the same realm as Target. And so just in the same way that somebody who shops at the dollar store is not going to shop at Target, they're not going to shop for these school supply kits. However, we work with some Title I schools that have, a lot of impoverished families. And there's something that we rarely talk about, which is, for example, if you have a single parent household who, maybe that parent is working 2 or 3 jobs, they don't have time to go school supply shopping. So you're removing an immense burden off their plate by offering this option. And then the other thing here is, one school in particular that I'm thinking about, it's a Title I school and it has a large immigrant population. So new Americans who are just trying to figure out the system, right? And a lot of those parents are English as a second language parents. Some of them don't speak any English at all. Okay, imagine this. You're new to the country, you don't speak English, and someone at the school gives you a list of like 30 items that you have to go find. Where would you even start, right?
Right.
And
If you can even if you can even get to the place in the first place,
exactly.
transportation.
You got to figure out transportation. Maybe they're using the bus system. They have to figure out how to get there, how to read the list, how to go find all the items. And then, oh my God, try distinguishing a 5-inch blunt scissors from a 5-inch sharp scissors.
I don't even know what that is. I had no idea there was a I don't know.
But if you bring a sharp scissors into a kindergarten class, that's a hazard, right?
Right.
It's a lot of stress and strain. And so in this particular case, what the school does is during conversations with parents, they will bring a laptop and they'll have the page pulled up and they'll have a translator that explains what it is, and they offer it as an option to parents. Never dictated. We have very few schools that say you need to do this. It's always just an option. But for those parents, it's like this immense burden lifted off their shoulders. So generally speaking, I mean, I'm sure there are some naysayers, but our biggest, I guess, hesitancy from people we're trying to work with is either a presumption that it's too expensive for their families, or just they think it's going to take a ton of time. They're like, oh my God, you're going to add another thing to my plate.
Right.
But if they give you time, you can explain, we provide all the materials. It only takes, we did a time study with our school partners. Typically we work with just one individual in the school, and over the span of the entire program, that person dedicates about 2 hours of time.
Right.
So it's not a ton of time to invest either.
Right. This is like, I really like what you're doing. Honestly, you're helping people sleep at night, like you're helping people get a better sleep, especially during the school season, because like this, as you stated before, this could be one of the most stressful times for parents all over the nation. Before we go, I want, if you don't mind, can you just walk at, like, any parent that's listening right now, can you just walk them through the process? Like how do they get in contact with Impacts? Like, how does it work? When do they get the supplies? Like all of that. Can you just walk through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so typically we forge a partnership with the school a couple different ways. Oftentimes, we are reaching out directly to the school administration, the principals.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, we're also working with the PTA or the
Mm-hmm.
PTO. Most
Yeah.
schools have a PTA or a PTO,
Right.
and occasionally, an individual parent will be our advocate and they'll bring it to the
Mm.
principal, they'll bring it to the PTO. So, once we forge a partnership with the school, which is pretty simple, they send us the school supply list. We build the landing page out so they can see what parents will see. They say, yes, we want to run this program. We launch that page typically in May.
Mm-hmm.
Parents can purchase school supplies through the summer. We do cut it off in late July so that we have time to pick and pack the order. Then
Yeah.
we actually send it directly to the school. So the
Mm.
parents don't even need to think about it, right? It's waiting for their kid during open house.
Mm.
And so all of the donations that we collect and match go directly to the school. We leave it up to the school to determine how those funds are spent. We also are able to accept donations in the form of supplies. So in that checkout experience, if parents want to donate, but rather than cash, they want to donate supplies, there's an
Mm-hmm.
option to do that as well. So the best way for a parent or a teacher or an administrator to get impacts in their school would be to make an introduction.
Mm.
Put us in front of a decision maker, whether that is this, the principal, the PTO chair. It could be a number of people. It
Mm-hmm.
could be a number of people in the school.
Yeah.
Honestly, sometimes
Yeah.
we work with the volunteer coordinators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But make an introduction. I'll plug our website. So our
Mm-hmm.
website is myimpacks.com. So MYIMPACKS.com. So
Yes, and
impact,
I'll include that in the notes as well, so that way people can just click.
perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great. Impacts, the name. I mean, it's kind of funny because I actually hated the name at first.
really, it's so
Brandon,
clever.
I
It's
know
so cool.
Brandon came up with it.
Yeah.
And it threw me off for just a couple of reasons. I was like, impacts. My biggest concern was nobody's going to know how to spell it. They're all going to spell it with a T.
Right, right.
And you know what, Kai? I was right. But it doesn't matter because Impacts is a really cool name.
I
So
agree.
for those listening, it's, combining the word impact with, packs, school supply
Mhm.
packs, backpacks, you name it. So impacts.
It's so clever. I really like once I knew what it was, I was like, I see what you did there. I
Yeah.
see what you did. I like
Brandon
that.
won me over. It took a few weeks, but he won me.
Well, as a former marketer, I'm sure you know how to navigate those waters sometimes, especially from like
Oh, yeah.
from a search engine optimization standpoint where it matters. I'm about to get real nerd. Can you see me wearing my Google shirt right now because
Yeah.
I talk with Google and Meta every single day, and
Oh, yeah.
every gray hair you see on my face comes from Google and Meta.
I believe that
Yep.
100%. I'm like,
Yep.
Brandon, we can go with this. Just know that we are committing to paying a lot more in ads than maybe we would otherwise need
Right.
to.
A lot of brand awareness happening there, but it's worth it. And it, like, I mean, Impacts has grown so fast, and for good reason. And my final question to you is this, Claire. Where do you see Impacts in the future? Like, where does it go from here?
So last year, we were just in Minnesota.
Mhm.
This year, we're across 8 states.
Wow.
And next year, we hope to be across, between 15 and 20 states. And then the following year, we really aim to be a nationwide company.
Mhm.
We want to bring this solution to parents, to educators, to school administrators across the United States. I
Mhm.
think every school district, every student, every teacher deserves access to convenient supplies, deserves access to equitable supplies.
Right.
And so that's really the mission. Like, how do we change the game of back to school shopping? You know what? Amazon does not get this one. We're taking it.
That's right. I love that. I love supporting businesses like yours, because I mean, you're truly in the community, born and raised in that community, helping out. So like, honestly, I'll include all of the information in the notes of this section. I'll also be writing a blog about this as well, and that'll be coming out during the week. Claire, thank you, honestly, for taking time out of your day to sit and chat with me. I know that my audience really is going to appreciate what you're offering, especially if they're in one of the states that you're working out of. And I'm like rooting for you that it becomes like a nationwide thing, and like that's really exciting. I see no reason why it wouldn't. By the way, I'm gonna assume you're a Twins fan. You're a Minnesota Twins fan.
They're killing it right now. They're killing it.
So I'm a Phillies fan, and like we lost tonight. We lost tonight, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I went to when I was out there in Minnesota for the event, I went to a Twins game, and it was nice. It was a nice experience. I love baseball, so like it was a nice experience. So
I'm a huge Minnesota advocate, by the way.
Yeah.
I will say, you know what? The sports, not much to write home about usually. So we take those wins when we get them. Okay?
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
We are celebrating.
I'm happy for you. I remember when the Timberwolves won like a play-in game, and y'all were celebrating like you won the championship. I'm like, that's hilarious. It's really funny.
Yeah,
but like,
you betcha. You betcha.
Well, I gotta tell you, when I was at the stadium, the people I was sitting next to, they know who they are because they follow me and they listen in. Nicest people I've ever met in my life. Like, they were so kind. I was there by myself, and like they took me in like I was part of the family. So Minnesota's been very kind to me. So yeah.
I hate to tangent, but since we're talking about sports and hospitality, I heard from one of the women that secured the Super Bowl, both of the last two Super Bowls that were held in Minnesota. She was a key player. And she's just an amazing human. Her name is Marilyn Carlson Nelson. She's a legend. Not just in Minnesota, but like quite literally across the world. Right. But she was talking about how she convinced the Super Bowl committee, or whoever it was that needed to be convinced, to bring the Super Bowl to Minnesota. And she said it was 100% hospitality. It was just wow. We kill it. One of the decision makers came unbeknownst to anybody in Minnesota, including Maryland. He just came to scope out the joint, and the first thing he does is get into a taxi or an Uber or some sort of a car rideshare thing. And he told that taxi driver what he was there for. Like, we're thinking about, whether or not Minnesota should be in the running for a Super Bowl. And the guy like turns off his timer and goes, "Let me show you around." And this guy thinks he's going to get like kidnapped and murdered, of course.
But this, still, like,
this driver was just like, no. I just want to show you some of the cool parts about the city, and literally just drove him around and showed him all the cool stuff in the Twin Cities.
That's really cool. I can tell you right now, that would not happen in Philadelphia.
Oh, hell no.
That would not happen. We were like, "Sir, where are you trying to go? Let's go. I got places to be."
That's
Come on.
called the Midwest hospitality. Can't be beat.
Yeah, you're not getting that in Philly. Unfortunately. Sorry. We're nice people when we want to be. So
are you? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Sometimes just don't get on our bad side, like it don't start nothing, won't be nothing, it's kind of one of those things. Oh my God, Claire, you're amazing. I'm so happy that we met, and I knew that I was going to vibe with you legit from the moment that we sat next to each other in that little panel thing, because we sat next to each other and introduced ourselves, and I'm like, okay, I can vibe with her. I like her. She's cool.
Yeah.
Same. Like legit, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Anybody that's listening right now, if you want some more information about Impacks, I'm going to include that in the notes section of this podcast. That way you can click, and just, even if you're not in the area that that Impacks are serving, I think it's a really good idea just to like learn about it anyway, because there might be ways that you can help it grow and donate and all of that. So thank you again for joining me. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening and for watching. As always, much love, good vibes, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.